Here we'll hook this up just to Ethereum or MetaMask first, and then we'll work on the Solidity part. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code again, and then close that. If we take a look at our greeter, we're going to want to add a connect button. Well, so first let's add that button in index.html. So we'll create another button with an onClick, which triggers some connect function, which is where all the nuts and bolts, all the action happens. And we'll write connect to MetaMask or so in this text, saved. And then let's hop over to greeter.js. We'll write a function called connect. And the very first thing we need to do is check if they have Ethereum in their window. So this window keyword in JavaScript refers to basically the browser window. So you can check the window like height or inner height, outer height, as well as the width, probably with the inner width and outer width. When someone is using MetaMask, or I think also Coinbase Wallet or a couple other providers, but MetaMask was the first one, then they should have this Ethereum attribute, if you will, injected into the window. So we'll say if they don't have window.ethereum, then we'll send them an alert saying no injected provider found, install MetaMask. And otherwise, or else, we'll go ahead and try to connect to their account. So we'll try, and so this is a very common thing in JavaScript where we have a try catch. We haven't run into this in Python, but there's a similar pattern called try except. But in JavaScript, so this try catch means we'll do stuff here, and if there would be an error, then whatever in the catch will happen. So we'll send an alert saying something went wrong connecting, refresh, and try again. And then we'll put our semicolon at the end since this is JavaScript. And then in this try, so the reason why we have this catch is because there's a lot that could go wrong in this try. So we're going to define a variable called accounts. And so we don't need this const in Python. There are a couple of these, kind of things that we put next to variables in Solidity. In JavaScript, there's const, there's let, and then there's variable or var. So for const, this is saying new variable never changes. For let, this is saying make a new variable, we can change it. And for this var, this is a global variable, can use anywhere, and we can change it. Whereas these other two things for let and for const, these are local. And so what I mean by local is that if we were to have in our function greet, let's say that we connected first and then we click our function greet. If we define some variable, which is our message, and we might say hello Web3, since we're connecting, maybe we put this at the end of connect rather, at the end of a successful connect rather, then we could say like alert message, and this would actually work, which is pretty crazy. It's not used inside this function. Anyway, so this is a global variable. That's pretty confusing though. For some, let's say that we had like a ton of functions, then someone reading this would be like, okay, where the heck is message actually used? And so this is useful, if you do have some var message, hello Web3, where maybe you want to use this not just inside of your greet function, but also inside of your connect function. It can still be kind of weird though for someone reading this, maybe they just jump over to your connect function. Where is this message coming from? So that's why in Python they discourage this now. JavaScript, this is also discouraged, but you can still do it. So what's better practice is to pass these things in as function parameters, or just to have some local variable, either a let or a const, depending upon whether it needs to change or not, and then defining it there. Okay, so that was a little aside about these variable declarations in JavaScript. So I'll go ahead and just put things back the way they were. Go back to hello world in our greet, and then we'll go ahead and remove this var message. So inside this const accounts, we're going to call a different method of window, or a method of window.ethereum, which is request, or it might be requests, and we'll find out. And inside of this, we need a parentheses and then a curly brace. So this is like in Python, it's like a dictionary. In JavaScript, it's called a mapping. And there's a bit of a different syntax, whereas in Python, you'd have some string usually. It could be an integer, and then a colon, and then some other string or integer or whatever. In JavaScript, instead of writing a string on the left, you can just write it without the quotes, which is kind of interesting. So we'll say method, and we'll do eth request accounts, and then we'll put in our params, and that doesn't need anything, but it still needs to get passed. All right, and then, so the thing is that, this is a request. So if the connection is slow, or for example, if someone doesn't approve the connection, then this will fail, and then this catch will get triggered. All right, and then, so usually people have multiple accounts, and so we'll grab the first one. So this accounts that gets returned, if it's successful, is a list of accounts, or in JavaScript, they call it arrays. And so we'll grab the first value, and remember that computers start by counting from 0. And then we'll just grab one more thing. We'll grab the chain ID. So we'll check whether they're connected to mainnet versus Goerli. And this is a very common pattern for mints. You might test out in Goerli and then later do it on mainnet. And if they're not connected to mainnet, then in your connect function, you should let them know that they're connected to the wrong chain, and it won't work. So we'll again do window ethereum.request, and we'll pass in the method, which this time is eth chain ID. And then for params, we'll again pass an empty list, and we'll see if I got all of this syntax quite right. And then down here, we'll write an alert, and we'll say connected to account, and then we'll mention what account we're connected to, and chain ID, and then we'll mention what chain ID. Okay, and so now we should be able to run this thing. Now the problem is that if we hop over to our index.html, and if we refresh, if we click on connect to MetaMask, okay, apparently I left in some message somewhere. So let's go remove that thing. Yeah, I had this alert message on line 6, so let's remove that. And then if we hop back to our index.html, go ahead and refresh again. So I still have this console open, which is useful. Click on connect to MetaMask. It says no injected provider found, install MetaMask. So there are a couple of things that could go wrong. I mean, for one thing, on Brave, I actually have like this kind of funky account where I'm almost never signed in, which is maybe a little bit more secure. It's partly because the password is like really long and complicated. So I don't use my Brave MetaMask all that often. Instead, we can use this on Firefox, which is more of where I do my Web3 development. But still, if we click on connect to MetaMask here, it says no injected provider found, install MetaMask. So one thing is if you're not logged into MetaMask, this will happen. So let's go ahead and make sure that we're logged in. And I am now. But even if I'm logged in, it still says this. And this is related to the fact that this is just being read in a file, whereas MetaMask, it really needs to interact with the Ethereum blockchain. So it needs to be live on the internet. But there's a kind of workaround if you don't want to run your own web server. In Python, we all have Python installed now, which is great. So in this terminal, so you can go terminal, new terminal, and then type in Python 3. We might need to just say Python if Python 3 gives you an error. We'll try Python 3-m and then http.server. And this will launch a little HTTP server on port 8000. And so this is something where you can access this thing, but no one else can. All right, so this is called localhost traditionally or typically. And so if we open up my Firefox browser again, and then if we navigate over to localhost 8000, and it could be that your localhost 8000 or port 8000 is in use. So you might have this show up as some different port number here. And if you do, then just make sure that you put that number in your browser. So back on Firefox, if I click on Connect MetaMask, then it looks like it's working. Again, I have a ton of accounts. I'll just connect to account 1 and we'll connect. And so it does say connected to account, but it's not mentioning what my account address is or anything like that. So let's try to figure out what's going wrong there.